In May 2006, Harry Kakavas walked into Crown Casino and proceeded to bet $164 million in 5.5 hours. He wasn't winning. He was hemorrhaging money at a rate of $30 million per hour, playing baccarat hands that took mere seconds to complete. By the time he stumbled out, he'd lost millions more in what casino staff described as a frenetic gambling session. This wasn't an anomaly. Between June 2005 and August 2006, just 14 months, Kakavas would wager nearly $1.5 billion at Crown Casino, betting up to $300,000 per hand. His total losses exceeded $30 million, wiping out everything he'd built as one of Australia's top real estate salesmen on the Gold Coast. But here's where the story gets interesting. Kakavas didn't just lose his fortune and walk away in shame. He sued Crown Casino for $20 million, claiming they deliberately exploited his pathological gambling addiction. And the casino, owned by billionaire James Packer, was worried enough about losing that they sent lawyers to negotiate a settlement before the verdict. They needn't have worried. The Australian legal system had a very clear message for Harry Kakavas and every other gambling addict in the country. You're on your own. Harry Kakavas was a force of nature in Gold Coast real estate. Brash, confident, loquacious, the kind of salesman who could convince you to buy a house you didn't need at a price you couldn't afford. He made a fortune in the booming Australian property market, and by the mid-2000s he was living the high life. But he had a secret that went back decades. Kakavas was a compulsive gambler, and his addiction was severe enough that he'd already committed crimes to feed it. In 1994, he defrauded Asanda Finance Corporation of $286,000, money he quickly lost at Crown Casino. He spent 4 months in jail in 1998 for that fraud, and the same year faced armed robbery charges that were eventually dismissed for insufficient evidence. The Asanda fraud became a turning point, or at least it should have been. Kakavas admitted he had a problem. Crown Casino's own executive, Bill Horman, a former deputy commissioner of Victoria Police, recommended that Kakavas exclude himself from the casino. Horman even referred Kakavas to Crown's psychologists for treatment. During Kakavas' 1998 trial, Horman gave a statement acknowledging all of this. Crown knew Harry Kakavas was a gambling addict. This fact would become central to everything that followed. After his release from jail, Kakavas tried to control his addiction, the only way he knew how. He got himself banned from virtually every casino in the country. He self-excluded from Crown Melbourne. He was banned from Star City Casino in Sydney in 2000 by NSW police. He systematically locked himself out of the very venues that had destroyed his finances and nearly his freedom. For a few years, it seemed to work. Kakavas focused on his real estate business, rebuilding his wealth and reputation on the Gold Coast, but in Las Vegas, where he still gambled occasionally, someone important was watching. In November 2004, Kerry Packer, the legendary Australian media mogul and one of the world's most famous high rollers, spotted Kakavas at the tables in Las Vegas. Packer didn't just note it and move on. He picked up the phone and called John Williams, Crown Casino's chief operating officer and son of Lloyd Williams, the casino's founder. The question was simple. Why is Harry Kakavas losing his money in America when he should be losing it in Melbourne? It was a good question from Crown's perspective. Kakavas was exactly the kind of whale they wanted, someone with deep pockets, a proven inability to stop gambling, and a taste for the highest stakes available. The fact that he was legally banned from their property was apparently a minor inconvenience. By this time, Kakavas' self-exclusion order from Crown had been lifted at his own request, but the casino was still barring him from entry, supposedly because he might cause trouble. More significantly, the Star City ban made it illegal under Victoria's Casino Control Act of 1991 for Crown to allow Kakavas into their Melbourne casino, illegal to send him promotional material, and illegal to let him keep any winnings if he gambled there. Crown decided to ignore all of this. they had a whale to land. Bill Horman, the same executive who had recommended Kakavas exclude himself 6 years earlier, who had referred him for psychological treatment, who had testified about his gambling problem, was now central to the decision to invite him back. The man who knew better than almost anyone at Crown that Harry Kakavas was a pathological gambler became his primary contact for luring him back to Melbourne. The inducements Crown offered were staggering: free luxury accommodation in their finest suites, free food and drink, no matter how expensive, free limousine travel whenever he wanted, and the crown jewel, a private jet to ferry him from his Gold Coast home to Melbourne and back, ensuring he could gamble whenever the urge struck. They even flew him to the Philippines and back for a holiday. All expenses paid, naturally. On several occasions, Crown gave Kakavas up to $50,000 in cash as lucky money delivered in a cardboard box as he boarded the plane to Melbourne. The total value of these inducements approached $10 million, and they worked perfectly. Kakavas returned to Crown's tables in late 2004, and what followed was 14 months of financial devastation on a scale that defied comprehension. He gravitated toward baccarat, a game with terrible odds that required no skill whatsoever, just money and the willingness to lose it quickly. He bet $300,000 per hand, playing at a speed that made the casino's eyes light up with dollar signs. During one session, he lost $2.3 million in 28 minutes. Let that sink in. $2.3 million in less than half an hour. That's $82,000 per minute, roughly $1,370 per second, gone on a game that takes seconds to play. The May 2006 session, the one where he wagered $164 million in 5.5 hours, became legendary among casino staff. This wasn't a man enjoying himself. This wasn't entertainment. This was addiction in its purest, most destructive form, and Crown Casino was feeding it with both hands. Kakavas borrowed millions from banks to keep gambling. He borrowed from friends, convincing them they were funding his successful real estate ventures when the money was actually going straight to Crown's tables. He borrowed from family members who trusted him. Every relationship in his life became another potential source of gambling capital, and through it all, Crown kept the private jet fueled, kept the luxury suite ready, kept the inducements flowing. They knew about the Star City ban, a fact that would later be confirmed in court. They knew he was a problem gambler, they just didn't care. By August 2006, Harry Kakavas had lost over $30 million, everything he had, and much more. The real estate fortune was gone, the borrowed millions were gone, his business was collapsing under the weight of debts he couldn't possibly repay, and Crown Casino had made a killing. But Kakavas wasn't done fighting. In what would become one of Australia's most significant legal battles over gambling addiction, he filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Crown, claiming they had acted unconscionably by exploiting his disability. His legal team, led by Alan Myers, one of Australia's top QCs, believed they had an excellent case. The argument was straightforward. Crown knew Kakavas was a pathological gambler. They had documentation going back to 1998. They knew he was legally banned from Star City. They knew it was illegal to allow him into their casino. They had deliberately offered him inducements worth millions specifically to lure him back to their tables. And then they had watched him lose $30 million while doing absolutely nothing to intervene. If that wasn't unconscionable conduct, what was? Crown appeared worried. In the weeks before the verdict, the casino sent its corporate counsel, Guy Jallan, to Melbourne to offer a settlement. James Packer, Crown's biggest shareholder, was understood to be keen to deal. The legal team seemed confident they might actually lose this one. Then James Packer changed his mind, and as it turned out, that was a very good call. On December 12, 2009, Justice David Harper delivered his verdict in the Victorian Supreme Court. Crown Casino was not liable for Harry Kakavas' losses. The ruling was devastating, not just for Kakavas, but for every problem gambler in Australia. Harper's judgment was a masterclass in setting impossible standards for victims while excusing predatory behavior from casinos. He acknowledged that Crown had broken the law by ignoring the Star City ban. He found that the $10 million in inducements had played an important part in attracting Kakavas to Crown. He even stated that, "In my opinion, it is clear that Mr. Kakavas was a problem, and indeed very possibly a pathological gambler." But none of it mattered. Harper ruled that Crown couldn't have known in 2004 that Kakavas still had a gambling problem because he seemed rich, tough, and in control. Never mind that Bill Horman knew everything about Kakavas' history. Never mind the psychological treatment. Never mind the self-exclusion orders. Never mind the criminal conviction for fraud committed to fund gambling. Kakavas looked successful, so Crown was entitled to assume he was fine. The judge's logic became even more twisted when discussing addiction itself. Harper concluded that even pathological gamblers should not be compensated for choices they have freely made. He argued that, had Mr. Kakavas wished to escape the enticements of the casino, he could have done so with ease. He could have arranged for self-exclusion. This completely ignored the fact that Kakavas had already tried self-exclusion. He'd banned himself from virtually every casino in Australia. Crown had deliberately circumvented these safeguards with their inducements and private jets, but Harper was unmoved. He believed Kakavas' behavior should have been valiant, vigilant, and disciplined, precisely the qualities a pathological gambler lacks. Harper was also remarkably critical of Crown's witnesses. He stated he was not impressed with much of the evidence given by Mr. Horman, yet he still believed Horman on key issues that seemed implausible at best. Horman claimed not to know that Kakavas had been treated for gambling addiction in 1998, even though it was Horman who had referred him for treatment. Harper accepted this claim, which was central to Crown's defense. Perhaps most tellingly, Harper condemned Crown's processes as a pathetic excuse for world's best practice, adding that Crown did not deserve to portray itself as a world leader in responsible gambling. Yet these failings translated into no liability whatsoever. Why? Because Harper fundamentally believed that casinos and clubs should have no duty to prevent problem gamblers from harming themselves. "The seeds of tyranny," he wrote, "are to be found in the footsteps of those who profess to know more about what is good for the subjects of their attention than do the subjects themselves." In other words, problem gamblers are on their own, and requiring casinos to help them would be playing God. Kakavas was stunned into silence. His normally brash, confident demeanor vanished. His legal team was equally shocked. They'd taken the case on contingency because they were sure of victory, but Harper's ruling sent a clear message to every gambling addict in Australia. The courts will not help you, no matter how badly the casinos behave. Tim McCorriston from Gamblers Help testified about a senior policeman with a long, successful career who stumbled into problem gambling and lost everything. He was estranged from all his family members. His wife he divorced, his 3 children refused to stay in contact with him, he lost all of his assets, and in the end, he attempted to commit suicide by gassing himself in his car. But the Kakavas ruling made it clear, casinos and clubs have no legal obligation to care about any of this. They can identify problem gamblers, track their losses, watch them destroy their lives, and face zero consequences as long as the gambler appears to be making rational decisions. The gaming industry celebrated. A Crown spokesman issued a brief statement. Crown welcomes the unanimous decision of the High Court. The Victorian Council for Gambling Regulation, which had observed the entire trial, agreed to a 43% increase in Crown's table numbers while the case was still running. Victoria's politicians formally approved Crown's expansion just days after Harper's original verdict. For Harry Kakavas, the consequences were catastrophic. By 2011, he'd filed for bankruptcy, listing $137 million in debt. $20 million was owed to Las Vegas casinos. Additional gambling debts in Connecticut and Britain were listed as unknown amounts. He owed money to at least 5 fries vendors, faced $15 million in state tax liens, and was drowning in legal fees to lawyers who'd taken his case on contingency. The man who had once made a fortune selling houses on the Gold Coast, who had been wooed with private jets and $50,000 cardboard boxes of cash, was financially obliterated. His real estate business was destroyed. His relationships with friends and family who'd lent him money. Richard Brading, principal solicitor at Sydney's Wesley Community Legal Service, argued that clubs and casinos should be required by law to identify problem gamblers, monitor their gambling, and ban them when they reach a point of crisis. The gaming industry's response was that you can't identify such people with certainty, a claim contradicted by their own software systems. The 2009 Productivity Commission draft report suggested tough new measures, giving problem gamblers a statutory right to seek damages if casinos fail to enforce self-exclusion orders, supply alcohol to intoxicated gamblers, or help self-excluded people gamble. It recommended allowing gamblers to set spending limits and cutting maximum hourly losses on poker machines from $1,200 to $120. The gaming industry reacted with horror. Leagues Clubs Australia warned that jobs will be lost, sporting and social amenities would be diminished, community funding would be severely affected. They claimed only 5 or 6 NRL teams would survive. The message was clear. Protecting problem gamblers would hurt the economy, and when the stakes are billions of dollars in annual revenue and substantial contributions to state budgets, problem gamblers don't stand a chance. About 10% of Australia's state revenue comes from gambling. Cracking down on exploitation would reduce that take, and politicians weren't about to sacrifice tax revenue to save addicts. The casino that broke the law to lure him back, that ignored a legal ban, that watched him lose $30 million in 14 months without intervening once, faced no consequences whatsoever. They kept their gaming license, they paid no fines, no penalties, no restitution.